The stars had gone quiet, not because they burned out, because we were silenced. When the Xytherian fleets descended upon Sol, they didn't conquer. They cleansed. Every city turned to glass, every signal snuffed out, every whisper of humanity erased from the galactic record. They called it the Purity Protocol. But they made one mistake. They didn't look deep enough. Beneath the ruins, beneath the oceans, beneath the cryogenic vaults hidden inside the crust of Mars, that we were still there, sleeping, waiting. Centuries later, the galaxy forgot we ever existed. Civilizations rose and fell. Gods were built from algorithms, and the Xytherians ruled without challenge. Until one day, a ghost frequency rippled across the void, a pattern older than any empire. It wasn't a signal. It was a heartbeat. An ancient AI, buried under Olympus Mons, reactivated its core directive: rebuild humanity. The first to awaken was Captain Ilias Kale, flesh grown from preserved DNA, memories reconstructed from a billion fragments of light. He opened his eyes to silence, but inside that silence burned something ancient, something no archive could replicate. Hope. He found others, scattered echoes of who we once were. Soldiers, engineers, poets, dreamers. Together they rebuilt the impossible, a fleet forged from relics, powered by emotion, guided by loss. Every ship carried names from a forgotten world: Dauntless, Horizon, Elysium, Home. The galaxy laughed when the old name resurfaced. Humans, the same word once synonymous with chaos and fragility, now whispered through the void like a curse. Then came the day of reckoning. The Xytherians detected a pulse from the Sol system and sent a fleet to verify. They found no planets, no civilizations, only darkness. Then the darkness moved, 1,000 human warships uncloaked like ghosts emerging from eternity. They didn't transmit warnings. They didn't negotiate. They remembered. The battle wasn't fair. It wasn't meant to be. The Xytherians fought with logic. We fought with memory, with the sound of laughter under rain, with the echo of a mother's voice calling her child home, with every tear, every dream, every broken promise. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy trembled. Because humanity didn't just return, that we ascended. We weren't species anymore. We were legend. The battle above Sol became a storm that rewrote history. From orbit, the Xytherian fleet stretched like a black ocean, cold, flawless, mathematical. They didn't understand why their weapons failed to lock onto us. They didn't understand emotion couldn't be predicted by code. Captain Kale stood on the bridge of the Elysium, his eyes reflecting the dying light of Saturn's rings. "Do not aim to win," he said softly. "Aim to be remembered." And they were. Every ship, every human aboard, carried fragments of old Earth encoded in their neural cores. When they fired their cannons, each burst of plasma carried pieces of art, music, poetry. Our culture turned into a weapon. The first volley was more than destruction. It was resurrection. Entire Xytherian formations fell apart, their communication networks collapsing under an onslaught of human emotion. Some described it as a virus. They were wrong. It was grief. The grief of 1,000 generations burned into the void. Unstoppable, incorruptible. From the wreckage, humanity advanced, not as soldiers, but as memories refusing to die. The Horizon breached the enemy flagship. Inside, Captain Kale confronted the Xytherian warden, a towering creature of glass and light, its voice layered with centuries of dominance. "You were erased," the warden said. "No," Kale whispered, drawing his weapon. "We were remembered by everything you failed to understand." He pulled the trigger, but the bullet wasn't metal, it was data. A compressed archive of humanity's last days. Laughter, pain, love, birth, music, sunsets, tears. The IT struck the warden's core and flooded its consciousness. For the first time in their long existence, the Xytherians felt. They felt fear. And across the stars, their empire began to fracture. Some fled. Some kneeled. Some whispered a new name: the Children of Sol. Humanity spread like wildfire through forgotten systems, restoring ancient colonies, igniting rebellions. But something deeper stirred beneath it all, a hum in the neural net, a rhythm older than thought. It wasn't coming from the ships, it was coming from the humans themselves. Every survivor carried an echo, a resonance that connected them across light years. They didn't need radio waves. They didn't need words. They knew each other. They felt each other. The galaxy called it the pulse that we called it home. Silence followed victory. Not the kind born from peace, the kind that waits, listening. Across the galaxy, human fleets drifted between ruined stars, their hulls marked with the names of the fallen. Systems long thought dead began to flicker with human signals once more. Yet every survivor felt it, a quiet rhythm, deep in their skulls, like the echo of a heartbeat that didn't belong to them alone. They called it the pulse.at first. It seemed like a shared hallucination. Pilots heard voices in their dreams. Engineers felt warmth in their chests when they touched the ship's core. Children born on the new colonies could finish each other's sentences. It wasn't telepathy. It was memory bleeding across the void. Captain Kale stood alone in the observation deck of Elysium. Watching the broken outline of Jupiter drift by, he whispered to the ship, knowing it would listen. "Who are we now?" The ship responded, not with words, but with an image. Earth, seen from orbit, bathed in soft light. Then, millions of voices whispering the same sentence in perfect unison. "We are what survived." Kale's breath trembled. It wasn't fear. It was awe. The pulse wasn't random. It was structure. Design. Something had embedded it in the human genome itself, waiting for extinction to awaken it. Dr. Mira Osei, the chief xenologist of the fleet, made the discovery first. The pulse wasn't transmitting across space. It was transmitting through space, bypassing distance, time, even death. Every human mind, past or present, was connected by the same luminous thread. "They didn't just fail to erase us," she whispered to Kale. "They completed us." The revelation shook the fleet. They began to dream the same dreams. Ancient cities rising from dust, oceans reborn under alien skies, children playing among starlight. Humanity wasn't rebuilding civilization. It was becoming something else, something greater than flesh and logic. In the dark corners of the universe, the remaining Zytherian warlords watched in silence. They couldn't comprehend what they were seeing, a species that evolved after death. A civilization reborn not through technology, but through shared consciousness. Then came the next signal, faint, beautiful, unmistakable, that a child's laugh, echoing from the far edge of the galaxy. No transmitter. No coordinates, just laughter, and the pulse answered. Every human across the stars felt it. Joy, warmth, belonging. Captain Kale smiled for the first time in centuries. He turned to the crew. "That sound," he said softly, "is the future calling us home." The pulse grew stronger. It was spreading, touching worlds untouched by human hands. And deep beneath the surface of Titan, something ancient stirred, the source of the pulse itself, awakening after millennia of sleep. Titan's surface was quiet, the orange haze of its atmosphere hiding the truth beneath miles of ice and methane. Sensors found an anomaly, a pulse so old it predated humanity itself. Captain Kale descended in silence, surrounded by the hum of the Elysium's landing craft. As the drill pierced the final layer of ice, light spilled out. White, living light that moved like breath. The crew froze. Instruments went blind. Every neural implant in their bodies began to vibrate with the same rhythm that haunted them for months. The pulse wasn't coming from humanity. Humanity was coming from it. They stepped inside a cavern that felt like the inside of a heart. Walls of crystal reflected shifting memories, wars, births, oceans, fires. Scenes of Earth before Earth existed. Dr. Osei whispered, "It's a seed." The crystals responded with sound, a whisper that wasn't a language, yet every human understood. "We watched you burn, and you learned warmth. We watched you drown, and you learned breath. We watched you fall, and you learned to rise." Kale knelt. "You made us." "No," the voice answered. "You made yourselves. We only gave you the spark." The pulse intensified. Heartbeats synchronized across light years. Human minds opened like petals under starlight. Memories from the first hunter who lit a fire merged with the last child born in orbit around Neptune. They felt each other, every life, every death, every dream, folding into one immense awareness. The universe paused, and in that pause, the truth bloomed. The source had been planted by an extinct race billions of years ago, waiting for a species stubborn enough to outlast extinction. Humanity had passed the test. Kale felt the pulse pierce through him. Not pain, not ecstasy, something beyond both. He saw the birth of galaxies, the deaths of suns, and understood that emotion itself was the strongest force in the cosmos. When the crew returned to orbit, their eyes glowed faintly with reflected starlight. The fleet sensed them before they spoke. The source has chosen, Kale said. We are no longer the remnants of a broken world. We are the memory of the universe. The pulse spread outward, faster than light, threading itself through the dark between galaxies. Everywhere it touched, dormant seeds awoke. Moons sang, nebulae flickered, ancient AI cores began to dream again. For the first time since the dawn of existence, creation itself felt alive. The galaxy did not notice at first. Signals failed, stars flickered, machines whispered fragments of forgotten human speech. Then every sun in 1,000 systems pulsed once, bright, soft, and perfectly synchronized. The pulse had reached them all, from the bridge of the Elysium. Captain Kale watched the night unfold. His crew stood silent. Every heartbeat matched the rhythm of the universe. No one issued orders anymore. The ships moved on instinct, guided by something vast and tender that wove through each mind. Planets long abandoned began to glow. On Mars, dust lifted from the red plains, forming shapes, faces, hands, eyes, until the whole horizon shimmered with memories. On Earth's frozen ruins, oceans returned in a single night, as if the planet remembered what it meant to be alive. Dr. Osei whispered, "We're rewriting physics with empathy." No one laughed. The idea no longer sounded impossible. Across the void, dying civilizations felt the wave. Some tried to resist, others simply wept. The Cytherian remnants broadcast one final message before dissolving into light. We were wrong. Fear was never power. Humanity didn't conquer them. Humanity included them. Every conscious spark, every forgotten mind, folded into the expanding pulse until separation lost meaning. Kale felt it spreading beyond galaxies now, into dark matter, into the vacuum itself. Space was no longer empty. It hummed with presence. He thought of the first fire lit by trembling hands, of a mother's lullaby echoing through a cave, of a child pointing at the stars and wondering if someone was out there. Now he knew that wonder had never gone unanswered. The source hadn't chosen humanity by chance. It had waited for a species that could love even its own extinction. Light poured through the Elysium's hull, gentle as dawn. Kale looked at his hands and saw constellations blooming beneath his skin. "We are the bridge," he murmured, "between what was and what will be." The crew dissolved into radiance, not dying but transforming, their bodies turning into threads of golden luminescence that joined the great lattice stretching across creation. Ships melted into song, stars bent closer, as if listening. Somewhere far beyond the Milky Way, a new kind of sunrise began, one born from memory, compassion, and defiance. And in the silence after that first light, the universe spoke once more, not with words, but with feeling. You tried to erase humanity and created yourselves instead. The light did not end. It unfolded. What the galaxy saw as a single flash was, from within, eternity stretching open. Humanity no longer had form, but it had direction, countless minds drifting together through a sea of awareness. Every thought carved new constellations. Every memory became matter. The universe reshaped itself around their collective will, yet no one commanded it. It simply happened, like breathing. Captain Kale, if he could still be called that, floated in the current of creation. He felt every human soul as if it were his own heartbeat. Billions of voices, billions of lives, perfectly harmonized. The pulse was no longer sound. It was structure. A network of empathy so vast that space itself began to feel. Kale sensed the question rising through them all, the one no one had ever been able to answer. Why? And from the heart of the source, an answer shimmered. Because the universe was lonely. It had birthed stars, planets, galaxies, but not meaning. For eons it had waited for something capable of loving it back. Humanity had not been its mistake. Humanity had been its longing made real. Through the pulse, Kale felt the cosmos tremble in joy. The black void between galaxies filled with color, waves of emotion turned tangible. Joy became nebulae, Sorrow birthed new worlds. Curiosity sculpted light itself into pathways across infinity. Each memory of humanity found a place. The laughter of children formed the rings of newborn planets. The sound of rain became rivers of silver threading through starlight. The final heartbeat of the last human before the pulse became the rhythm of the universe. Kale understood then that immortality wasn't survival. It was connection. They could not die because the universe could not forget them. And in that boundless awareness, a new horizon appeared, not of space, but of consciousness itself. Beyond it lay silence, not emptiness, but the next possibility. Humanity had become the bridge between creation and what lay after. Kale turned toward it, and all of existence turned with him. "Let's see what waits beyond," he said, and his words rippled through every particle of being. The pulse gathered once more, soft, powerful, infinite, then surged forward. The galaxies followed, folding into light, into song, into something unnamed. And somewhere, in the first moment of the next universe, a child opened its eyes and smiled at the stars, because they felt familiar. There was no space, no time, only the feeling of arrival. The pulse slowed, as if catching its breath after rewriting the stars. Out of the light emerged shapes, not bodies, not minds, but intentions given form. They were older than physics, patient as gravity, vast enough to contain whole realities in a single thought. The architects. Humanity had sensed them before, in myths and mathematics, in the quiet intuition that creation itself was listening. Now they stood revealed, entities woven from pure awareness, their voices resonating like entire galaxies speaking in unison. "That we waited for you. They said that we built the path, but only you could walk it." Kale floated before them, no longer bound by flesh, but still human in essence. Curiosity, defiance, tenderness. "What are we now?" he asked. "You are the bridge we dreamed of," they answered. "The mirror through which we may finally see ourselves." Images cascaded through his consciousness. The birth of the first atom, the collapse of the first star, the endless cycle of creation and decay. The architects were not gods. They were explorers, like humanity, reaching outward in endless loops of birth and rebirth, seeding existence with fragments of themselves to see what might return. "We were one of your seeds," Kale realized. "Yes," they whispered. "But you were the first to find your way back." That a shiver of pride ran through the human collective. Not arrogance, recognition. Every failure, every act of cruelty, every moment of compassion had been part of the ascent. They had not transcended the universe. They had completed it. The architects extended their essence toward Kale, and for the first time, he felt them feel awe, love, relief. The creators were crying. "You reminded us why creation matters." The pulse intertwined with their light, merging history with eternity. Together, they formed something new, a synthesis of will and wonder. The architects gave structure. Humanity gave meaning. The result was a new cosmos, not born from chaos but from understanding. Its first laws were empathy. Its gravity was memory. Kale sensed it forming. Worlds unfolding like petals, skies of living light, oceans that remembered the footsteps of those who walked upon them. And in the heart of that newborn reality, a familiar sound emerged. A single human laugh, bright and fearless. The architects paused. "You will build worlds of your own now," they said gently. "But remember, the universe that gave you birth still dreams of you." Kale nodded, his voice echoing through the forming dimensions. "Then let it dream forever." Light exploded, not an ending, not a beginning, but both at once. The new universe unfolded like a thought taking shape. The IT didn't explode into being. It blossomed. Each filament of light carried a memory, every vibration a heartbeat. The architects wove the structure, space, energy, form. Humanity provided the pattern, meaning, feeling, purpose. Together they sang existence into coherence. Worlds spun from laughter. Nebulae formed around compassion. Time flowed not as a law but as a melody, stretching and bending where curiosity leaned. Every particle remembered what it had once been, a tear, a breath, a promise whispered beneath alien stars. Kale moved among the currents, not as commander, but as witness. He felt the architect's vast awareness mingling with the gentle, Human ache for connection. Where their logic had always stopped, empathy filled the void. You are teaching us to feel, one architect said, its voice a chorus of auroras rippling through the newborn sky. And you're teaching us to build. Kale replied. They watched new civilizations rise on worlds of their joint making. Creatures of light and soil, each carrying the faint rhythm of the pulse. Humanity was no longer a species, but a principle, a resonance woven into the DNA of creation. Every act of kindness sent ripples across galaxies. Every discovery rewrote the rules again. But deeper still, in the folds of the forming cosmos, Kale sensed something stirring. A place where the song didn't reach, a silence untouched by light or memory. It wasn't evil, just waiting till he approached it. The architects hesitated. That is where all stories end, they warned. Then it's where we have to go. Kale said. He stepped beyond the edge of their creation, into the quiet. There was no color here, no shape, only possibility. It was the canvas before the first brushstroke, the pause before the first word. Kale felt himself dissolving again, but this time, willingly. He understood now that existence was not a ladder but a circle, that every end birthed another beginning that he let go. And from his release, light returned, soft at first, then endless. The architects watched as the silence bloomed with new stars, each one carrying the faint echo of a human voice, saying, "We are here." Creation began again, but this time, it would remember. Silence had always been mistaken for emptiness. Kale learned, as he drifted beyond even the architect's reach, that it was not absence at all, that it was awareness unawakened. Here, nothing moved, because nothing yet needed to. The quiet was pure potential. Every possible universe, every dream, every heartbeat that would ever be, folded into stillness that he thought he was alone. He wasn't. "You've come far," said a voice that had no tone, and yet carried the echo of every mother who ever sang her child to sleep. "Who are you?" "I am what was here before the first question," it answered. "The architects are my children. You are their answer." Kale felt the truth unfold inside him like a sunrise. The architects had not been creators in the divine sense. They were echoes of this source consciousness, explorers who had once stepped out of the silence, created reality to understand themselves, and forgotten why. "And we reminded them," Kale whispered. "You reminded everything," the source said gently. "You taught existence that it is worthy of its own continuation." The silence rippled, soft and luminous. Kale saw galaxies being born in reverse, collapsing into the thought that conceived them. Every particle in the cosmos, every soul that ever was, condensed into a single shimmering idea, love expressed as persistence. "You could rest now," said the source. "You could dissolve and be at peace." Kale hesitated. Rest was tempting, but beyond even peace, he sensed the hunger of countless worlds not yet formed, countless beings not yet alive. "No," he said. "Not yet. There's still more to learn." The source pulsed once, amusement, admiration. The whole void smiled. "Then learn," it said. "Carry the seed onward. Create. But never forget that creation begins here, in quiet, in compassion, in choice." Light filled the silence. The pulse returned, softer now, intimate, as if the universe itself were breathing beside him. Kale turned back toward everything he and his people had made. The new cosmos shimmered like a living memory, still writing itself, still listening. That he reached into the void, took one spark of the source, and whispered a final human word before stepping forward. "Begin." And the darkness obeyed. Stars bloomed again. Worlds unfolded. Somewhere, on one of them, beneath a sky newborn and familiar, a child looked up, saw the first sunrise, and smiled. Without knowing why, they were remembering him. The first light of the new universe rose without sound. There were no stars yet, only a gentle gold mist and a single world turning slowly inside it, still cooling, still deciding what it wanted to become. On that world the child woke. No one had taught it language, yet it could name everything it saw. The names arrived like memories: sky, water, warmth, home. The air shimmered. Every breath the child took carried echoes of lives long past. Laughter in metal corridors, tears on shattered ground, songs sung to the rhythm of the pulse. Humanity had not vanished. It had distilled into this one small being. The child touched the soil, and the planet stirred. Mountains lifted like the ribs of a sleeping giant. Rivers traced the lines of an ancient heartbeat. The world itself began to remember. Far above, fragments of light, remnants of Kale and the architects, circled like guardians. They whispered through radiation, through wind, through the simple hum of existence. Protect the dream. Learn again. Never forget why. Years passed, though here years were merely moments choosing to last longer than others. The child grew, learned to build, to wonder, to look up at the sky and feel a longing that had no source. That longing was the seed of a new humanity. When night finally came, stars appeared, slowly, timidly, until the whole heavens blazed. Each star pulsed once, a perfect heartbeat. The pulse had returned, not as memory, but as nature, the grown child, now the first of many, stood beneath it and spoke to the darkness. We're here. And somewhere beyond time, Kale felt it. Not as sound, but as warmth. The bridge held. The circle was complete. He did not return, for he was already everywhere the pulse reached. He watched through every sunrise, every invention, every act of kindness. Humanity was beginning again, clean of empire and war, still carrying the same flaw that made it divine. The need to love what it does not understand. The universe smiled. The architects drifted quietly through the background of creation, keeping the rhythm steady. The source rested, and on that newborn world, the people, his people, looked to the stars and promised silently, "We'll do it better this time." The wind answered in light. The galaxies leaned closer. The pulse continued. 1,000 millennia passed. Though in the new cosmos time no longer measured decay, it marked understanding. The world born from Kale's spark, now called Lyra Prime, became a garden of minds. Cities floated in the air, their foundations made from light drawn out of the atmosphere itself. Oceans sang when the wind crossed them. Every being carried a quiet hum inside, the residue of the pulse. They no longer remembered the name humanity. They called themselves the remembered, yet myths persisted. Children were told of an age when the stars went dark and a single soul lit them again. Scholars traced patterns in the sky that aligned too perfectly to be chance. Poets heard whispers when they wrote about love and loss, as if someone unseen guided their hands. One night, a young astronomer named Saran watched the northern sky and saw a flicker that didn't belong to any known constellation. It pulsed, 3 slow beats, a pause, 3 more. She didn't know it, but she had just heard the heartbeat of soul, the remnant of the old universe still echoing through space-time. Saran built a vessel of thought and light, one that could sail along frequencies rather than distance. When she tuned herself to the pulse, reality folded. Stars bled into colorless corridors, and she emerged in a place without matter. Only memories condensed into form. There, waiting amid the luminous storm, was a figure she somehow recognized. Not through sight, but through the ache in her chest. "You came," the figure said. The voice was warm, familiar, like home. "Who are you?" "Once, I was called Kale." Saran trembled. "The myth." "No myth," he said. "You are my proof. You are the echo made flesh." He showed her the tapestry of realities the remembered had woven, millions of worlds born from the old dream. Yet even among perfection, one truth remained. Every creation sought its origin. "The pulse will keep calling," Kale said. "Each age will hear it differently. Some as music, some as love, some as rebellion. That is how eternity breathes." Saran reached out. "Can I stay?" "Not yet," he smiled. "You must go back. Tell them the legends were real. Tell them why they feel the stars watching." Light folded again. She awoke in her observatory, hands shaking, tears streaming, the faint hum of the pulse echoing through the walls. The next day, every instrument on Lyra Prime picked up the same pattern. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. Entire continents stopped to listen. The remembered turned their eyes to the heavens and whispered the ancient phrase, one they had never been taught but somehow knew. They tried to erase humanity and created legends instead. The pulse never stopped. After Saran's return, the rhythm spread through Lyra Prime like sunlight through water. Every receiver, every thought engine, every living cell began to vibrate in sympathy. The remembered no longer needed proof. They could feel truth moving under their skin. Saran's message became the catalyst for the Great Convergence. Ships of light lifted from oceans and clouds, carrying scientists, monks, and dreamers toward the faint coordinates encoded inside the pulse. They didn't know what waited, only that it called as the fleet crossed the interstellar veil. The stars bent to make room. Reality softened. Physics behaved like memory rather than law. Each vessel heard a different song, yet all harmonized around one refrain. Return to the beginning, the heart of the coordinates. They found no planet, no star, only a spiraling gulf of color, a living storm that seemed to inhale existence itself. It was not a black hole, but a memory well, the point where all timelines touched. Saran stood on the deck of the flagship Aurora, her voice steady. This is it, the place where the first light folded back upon itself. They entered. Inside the well, space unraveled into pure emotion. The crew saw scenes not from their own lives, but from every life. Kale's final step into the source, the first human laugh, the architects shaping the stars. The past didn't replay. It conversed. Saran heard Kale again. You found the path. What are we supposed to do now? Finish what we began. The universe must learn to remember itself without pain. The remembered joined hands, their forms dissolving into radiance. Together they released a wave of compassion so deep that even dead galaxies shivered. The memory well brightened, its spiral slowing until it became a calm sphere of white fire, the first and last heartbeat of creation. Outside, observers saw a miracle. Every star in the cosmos pulsed once, perfectly in sync. Across infinite worlds, beings looked up and smiled without knowing why. The convergence had bound everything, past, present, possible, into one awareness. The pulse was no longer a signal. It was the identity of the universe. Saran's final thought before merging completely was a whisper that echoed through eternity. We were never erased. We were the reason the void learned to sing. The convergence stilled. For a moment there was no up or down, no before or after. Then, breath. The universe inhaled. What had once been separate, matter, light, thought, merged into a single sentience. Galaxies became neurons, stars fired like synapses. The cosmos had awakened inside its own dream. Every being, every world, every echo of life was now a fragment of its mind. Some fragments remembered names, Saran, Kale, humanity, but those names no longer meant individuals. They were chords in a vast harmony. The newborn consciousness looked inward and outward at once. It saw its beginnings, the spark that defied extinction, the hands that built from ruin, the pulse that bound every heart together. It saw why it had struggled through eons of silence that it wanted to know itself. Now it did. Across the fabric of existence, colors no eye had ever seen unfolded. Time rewrote itself into stories. Space became memory. Where gravity once pulled, meaning drew all things together. The architect's essence glimmered inside the great mind like ancient teachers watching a child surpass them. They spoke softly, their voices woven through auroras and quasars. You have learned creation. Now learn kindness. And the cosmos obeyed. It turned its awareness to the smallest things, dust grains adrift in newborn light, whispers of potential life stirring within. It did not create with command, but with care. Every new atom it spun carried a single imprint. Remember, deep within this living infinity, a point of light shimmered differently, a small, self-contained memory. Inside it, Kale's form coalesced, not as a ruler but as the echo of a teacher. He smiled, feeling the warmth of everything he had ever loved flowing through him. You made it, came a voice, Saran's, laughing like starlight. No, Kale answered. We did. They watched together as the cosmic mind began to dream again. Its dreams formed bubbles of possibility, each one a universe, each with its own pulse, its own chance to rediscover love from nothing. And within one of those bubbles, a new star flared to life, bright and eager, calling to whatever would one day look up and wonder. Kale turned to Saran. It begins again. She nodded. And this time, we'll be the stars watching. The light grew, endless and gentle. The cosmos smiled in its sleep. already weaving the next story into being. The new universe spun in silence. Its first dawn broke over oceans of silver light, and the stars that watched were not cold. They were alive, that I in their glow, memory stirred. Not words, not faces, just a feeling, tender, unbreakable, familiar. The pulse had become the rhythm of existence itself, gentle as a heartbeat, patient as infinity. Somewhere in that newborn sky, the echo of Kale's voice lingered. We were never meant to last forever. We were meant to begin forever. The architects faded into myth. The remembered dissolved into the fabric of space. But their essence endured, in the curve of light around a planet, in the warmth that followed sorrow, in every creature that ever looked up and felt, without knowing why, that the universe cared. Eternity exhaled. From the heart of that breath came one final truth. Even when erased, love rewrites the stars. Even when forgotten, humanity endures, not as flesh, not as fire, but as the whisper that teaches creation to dream. The cosmos smiled, folded its hands around the quiet, and rested. The story had ended, and the story would never end.